Our next guest is a venture investor
8,000.
working with companies that have reached $22 billion in market value. He was also the driving force behind one of the internet's hottest destinations. Joining us right now for the rest of the hour is co-founder of both Initialized Capital and Reddit, Alexis Ohanian. And Alexis, it's great to see you. Thank you for coming in today.
Good to be back.
You know, I have so many things I want to talk to you about, but let's start with where the markets stand right now. With the damage that we've seen in technology, with the concern people now have about things. You're somebody who's working in venture capital, so you see the very early startups of this, but you have to be looking at potential exits for some of these companies into the public markets.
Yeah.
What do you think, given the extreme volatility we've seen the last month and a half?
It certainly is tough to watch. At the same time, we're lucky because we invest so early. Our time horizons are at least 5, 7, 10 years out when these companies we're expecting a return. We're literally their first check in many cases. But the reality is, look, this is in some ways just a byproduct of the business cycle, and we know that tech stocks have been doing tremendously well for quite a run now. And it seems like the market's clearly cooling off. But our belief still remains every business is going to have to be a software business in some way, shape, or form. And so for us to be able to make these investments on bright engineers building software solutions still feels like the right long-term play.
We've had other venture capitalists who have come in recently and talked about how enterprise software is a place that companies are spending no matter what. Is that your view?
Yes.
Opinion?
Yeah, and it's actually, we noticed a turning point in the last couple of years where I think basically the C-suite all got on Instagram. and they what I mean by that is they got exposed to, and there's now a broad use of world-class software for really trivial stuff. So once enough execs have spent time looking at selfies on Instagram of their kids or their grandkids, they come back to work, they sit at their desk, and they look at the software that they're using and that their companies are using, and they can't believe how antiquated it is by comparison. And so we're seeing this new, really this new trend of startups that are selling direct to the enterprise level from jump, because they're people who left that world, see the problems, and are saying, I can build a better solution, and I'm just going to sell it back to my old buddies, and then hopefully the rest of the industry. Whereas 10 years ago, if you were starting, Dropbox, as Drew was, you'd be trying to sell the, basic $10 a month package to some little startup. Today, companies realize this existential need, and startups are able to sell to enterprise direct.
You talked about Instagram, and I was curious, sort of, since you built one of the sort of early social media platforms in Reddit, what your take is right now on the Facebooks, Snaps, and Twitters of the world. There's a massive story, I don't know if you got a chance to see this, called Delay, Deny, Deflect, how Facebook leaders leaned out in crisis this morning. It is,
I'll be reading this after we get off air.
It is, it is an amazing
sensational
piece because it goes into the lobbying effort that Sheryl Sandberg took on over the past year. I don't know if you saw after Tim Cook made these comments.
On privacy.
Privacy.
Yes.
Mark Zuckerberg ordered his whole management staff to no longer use iPhones and to only use Androids. I mean, there are these little nuggets of just craziness. But you sort of sense a real sense of panic inside that company in a way that I don't even think I understood before it.
Okay, so what you're telling me is not surprising me. I do think there is still, even though Facebook, the platform has been in decline, Instagram, WhatsApp still continue to grow and still continue to have a huge impact on our lives, and they've only started monetizing it. I do think we've reached peak, what I would call traditional social, where this idea of we all follow individuals, and an individual has a following, that model over the last 10 years has flaws in it, can break down. And I think the new wave that's happening right now is community-based. And I say this a little selfishly because I think Reddit was ahead of the game. But if we look at the other emerging platforms that have come up, companies like Discord, Nextdoor, and I'm not an investor in any of these companies, but this model of people wanting to follow communities, whether it's of interest or location, seems to be where we're fleeing now because we're burnt out on social.
Explain the difference between following individuals and following communities.
So I think we're sort of burnt out on this idea of a lot of us following an individual and sort of amplifying whatever they're saying or what photos they're posting. And I think we're retreating back to spaces where we want to go, where everyone loves the Yankees, and we can just all talk about the Yankees, and we don't have to deal with all the other noise that comes with traditional social or the trolling or just the weirdness of it, the sort of antisocial nature of it. And instead,
and the mean nature of it.
Yes,
sometimes.
frankly. And instead, we want to go back to, and whether it's knowing what our geographic community is talking about on Nextdoor, or whether it's knowing what all of us who are Yankees fans want to share news about, I think there's going to be this retreat to community platforms, and I think we've kind of burnt out on the idea of following on individuals alone.
When you say peak social, though,
Yeah.
you say admittedly they've only just begun to monetize things
Yeah.
like Instagram and other platforms. So it may be the most that we are in terms of sharing and following, but it doesn't mean the money drops off from here. Is that what you're saying?
I would agree with that, and I think I personally believe that we are caring more about our privacy, as let's just say Americans, than we ever have. But at the end of the day, it's still not a big enough pull. Even hearing about the Facebook data breach, there were tons of people who were shutting down their Facebook accounts and going right to Instagram.
Right, which is
also on my Facebook.
Right.
And so I really think that we have to make, as creators and as investors, we have to make a just better user experience to draw users and really create that competition.
Is the business model of people getting something for free but trading off their privacy, is that a dying business model, or is that just the reality of people want stuff for free?
My hunch is it's going to get more transparent in the future. I don't know what the new platform will be, but I think one of the features that it would have is a much more explicit model. It's like, look, I want to be marketed to, but I also want to draw some of the benefit from it. But then I also look, I was on here talking about Fortnite. We've talked about Twitch. There are interesting models there around monetizing social platforms or community that are around digital goods, which may seem absurd until you see the numbers, the billions of dollars spent on a digital outfit in Fortnite. But I think there's a non-advertising way to do this that actually lets users take out their credit card, pay money in order to reward one another.
I just want to point out, we had Jaron Lanier here earlier this week, and he said something very similar, where he said he thought we'd be moving to sort of the Netflix subscription model for all of these things.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're saying and seeing too?
I do really think that, and I know we actually had recently backed a company called Girl Boss that wants to create a professional sort of LinkedIn for millennials, particularly millennial women. But Sophia's entire model is based on this idea of let's create some software that is a subscription-based model that creates real value and a real community.
Can I ask you about the subscription-based idea, though, just for a second? When you think about Facebook right now, if it was a paid product in the United States, the average subscriber would have to pay over $100 a year to actually make up for the amount of money that they're making on advertising.
Yeah, I don't think you go back. I think you build the model from jump with that subscription in mind. And so in the short term, maybe in the short term, you're definitely sacrificing some revenue. And I think, but as those models get smarter, you find ways.
But how many subscriptions are we going to ultimately have? Whether it's a Hulu or a Netflix, whether it's a Wall Street Journal or a New York Times, whether it's now your cable bill, magazines are now going behind paywalls. I mean, and that, by the way, is I don't want to say it's a 1%er world, but it's not a 100%er world at all.
No. The reality is most of these will not be able to thrive in this model. The simple test that I have for it is, can this content be created for free by a 12-year-old with a smartphone? If the content that's being created is as simple as like a nice photo of a cat or a top 10 list of like which Disney princess you're more like, that content is not going to be defensible with that kind of a model. But if it is unique, if it does require research, if it is special, then I think you can justify it.
Can I ask you about a real-world other investment you've made?
Sure.
You're into Skip, right?
Yes, I am.
So Skip is the scooter business.
Yes.
I don't understand the hotness of the scooter business. I don't understand.
Never ridden on a
I don't understand the valuations.
West Coast
change your
thing.
life.
I don't understand the valuations that are assigned to these things.
Yeah.
Ford just bought one of your competitors.
Yes, they did.
You got, I think. You got granted rights to actually do this in San Francisco.
Yes.
Their version didn't.
Yes.
What's happened here?
Okay, there's a ton of hype, no doubt. 3 years ago, we saw a version of this with bicycles. And you probably saw the photos in China of these. There was a glut of these bicycle sharing startups. Bicycles were just piled up everywhere, causing all kinds of a mess. this trend came, a ton of money was put into it. It disappeared because people realized it wasn't going to work here in the States. A few of these companies pivoted into these scooters, which are smaller form factor, better user experience, all this sort of stuff. What it is solving is that last mile. And a majority of the trips that are done by, whether it's a taxi or a car sharing service, are only about a mile or a mile and a half. And that experience is awful, from having to wait, meet your driver, it's time consuming. And the idea is, if we can make this easy enough and simple enough, you can just pick up one of these things, go to where you need to go, and drop it off and forget it. And Skip's taken and I'm very proud of them for taking this approach of actually working with cities and communities to get those permits and to work with the areas they serve instead of just.
What do you think of Ford or others trying to buy these things?
I think it's smart. In the end of the day, these companies know now that they have to be more than just the makers of the hardware. They need to actually own the networks or have some relationship with customers, whether it's a ride-hailing app or whether it's the sort of last-mile scooter business. The challenge, though, is going to be, how do you get great engineers to come work on this software? And there's a talent war like no other right now.
What's the defensibility of this? Why is Skip any better than Scoot or Bird or any of these other guys?
I think, I do think that working with cities and with communities will matter. Because
don't they all have
process.
The anti-Uber approach?
Yeah, cities have learned from Uber, and unlike a car sharing service, a city can actually confiscate these things when they're on the street and lock them up. They can enforce permitting. And I think the magical part of this is that we don't have a real solution for that last mile problem until it becomes simple enough to just open up your phone, have something be there that you can get on and get to where you need to go. And so I think it'll be like Lyft, Uber. Most people will have a couple apps on their phone, and then whoever can provide the best experience is the one.
And how many of these are going to go out of business when this is all done? I mean, there will be a bust, right? There'll be a scooter bust when this is over.
Yes, yeah, I think they'll end up. I mean, there were other ride-sharing services we don't talk about anymore that had silly names that got funded and went away, and now we talk about Uber, Lyft. I think we'll be in a similar situation with probably 2 or 3 players, and then whoever has the best experience for users, but also for the communities they serve, triumphs.
We talked about Bitcoin and that being down at 5,400. What does that mean for Coinbase or for others?
Well, so Coinbase has had significant growth in spite of the fact that the markets are doing poorly. They still make money as long as people are trading. Trading numbers have declined obviously this year, but long term, I think they're continuing to secure themselves as the trusted resource for getting fiat into crypto. And I'm personally really happy with the fact that there has been a tough year in all these cryptocurrencies, because it gets people focused on the things that matter, which is building the software that's actually going to hopefully make all these things tremendously valuable in the long term. There were a lot of charlatans and scenesters that have been in the mix, and this is a great way to shake them out. There are still people pitching us really impressive blockchain-based companies, but they're far more serious and in far fewer numbers now, but they're far more serious than what we used to see a year ago. And that's good. I think the people who are going to be working on crypto now need to be thinking 10 years down the road and not about just trying to make a quick buck and buy a Lambo.
Okay. Alexis, thank you very much.